Welcome to the Degenerate Dillon Podcast, where Dillon has you covered with everything from spreads to futures to prop bets. Follow him every weekday as we pick daily best bets using stats, analytics, and a little bit of luck. Now here's your host, Degenerate Dillon himself, Dylan Nelson.
Hey everybody, how we doing? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Degenerate Dillon podcast or show, however you're listening or watching. We appreciate you coming in. We're once again with Jackson Collier, the basketball guru. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Well, as if you followed the show and you saw the bracket preview, you now know my bracket is trash. I literally have lost every single Final Four team that I had.
Really? I still have 3.
Yeah, I had Iowa, Texas, Ohio State, and Illinois. And they're all good.
I told you, I called Abilene over Texas. I tried telling you. You thought I was crazy. Got you on that one.
You did get me on that one, no doubt.
I will take that with I'm taking it and running with it. You beat me on multiple other picks, but that was my one that I was like, I'm for sure on this one.
Yeah, and I had the huge Cleveland State upset coming, and Houston beat them 87-56, so that game wasn't even close.
You picked the wrong 15 too.
Yeah, no. I don't know. We're not going to talk about my bracket. Let's talk about your bracket. I know you got at least 2 Final Four teams are still in it. Do you have more than that?
I have 3. So I had my Final Four was Florida State, Gonzaga, Arkansas, and Oklahoma State. So I lost Oklahoma State, but I still have the other 3. As far as the Sweet 16 goes, kind of a cluster. So I did have Baylor. I did have Michigan. I did have Florida State. I did have Gonzaga. I did have Arkansas. That might be it. I might only have 5 in the Sweet 16. I don't know. I might have a couple more than that, but
man, and the huge surprise to me in the round of 32. I mean, obviously there was surprises to go around, but the huge surprise to me was Oregon State beating Oklahoma State. I was with you. I mean, like I didn't have them in my Final Four, but I didn't blame you for having them, in your Final Four. This team had played so great at the end of the year.
I was just so high on them because, they beat West Virginia at West Virginia without Cade Cunningham. So then you insert Cade in the NCAA tournament. Well, then West Virginia gets knocked out early too. So because I think I had West Virginia in my Sweet 16 too, maybe even Elite 8.
It just turns out that the Big 10 and Big 12 just weren't all they were hyped up to be this year, were they?
Tried telling people that. I was never high on – I was somewhat high on the Big 12. I thought that you could see some good things there, especially with guys like Cade. Oklahoma came in as a 9 seed, 8 or 9 seed. They still have Austin Reeves and all that sort of stuff. But I was definitely higher on the Big 12 than I was the Big 10. I just was not convinced at all of the Big 10. And now it's just Michigan left?
Just Michigan left, yeah.
And the SEC that was so down this year has 2 Sweet 16 teams.
Yeah, and the Pac-12 that was ultimately down too, and they got 2 teams. I mean, go ahead.
I think the ultimate reason that we're seeing so many weird results and we're seeing so many a mixed bag of sort of seedings getting into the Sweet 16 and all that, you really didn't have any out of conference play that was worth much. You had the SEC Big 12 Challenge. You had a couple games here or there, but as far as large scale big games before you get into conference season, there was Kansas and Kentucky because they play. It seems like they have been in the past 3 years. You didn't have a whole lot of Power 5 versus Power 5 matchups. So you didn't have a whole lot of even Loyola. People like to crap on Loyola's schedule because they're in the Missouri Valley Conference, but find me teams in the non-con who will want to play them. You're just not going to find any Power 5 teams or high major teams in basketball who want to play them because they know they can compete, and they're proving it again after making the Final Four a couple years ago. Well, they're in the Sweet 16 again. They had to beat a number 1 seed to get here. So I just think when you don't have those matchups, I mean, mid-majors aren't going to play high majors in most years, but the pandemic year, without having non-conference high major versus high major competition, that sort of thing, I just think it completely blew a kink into the whole seeding process and what we expected out of these teams.
Yeah, and speaking of non-con schedules, now that you get a chance to kind of take, and it's been discussion all week on Arkansas, Twitter and forums, that Arkansas's non-conference schedule was considered crap compared to who played non-conference schedules at the beginning of the season. And I mean, look at it now. I mean, what was it? Oral Roberts were playing again in the Sweet 16. North Texas won their first round game against Purdue. Am I missing someone?
Abilene beat Texas in their opening round game.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean,
Florida won their opening round game too. So you have that conference opponent. Alabama won their opening round game. Oklahoma State, Arkansas lost to Oklahoma State, but they won their opening round game too. So, did Oklahoma get knocked out first round or is it second round?
Oklahoma got knocked out in the first round. Oklahoma State second round.
Second, okay. But yeah, you had a bunch of non-conference opponents that Arkansas played get at least past the first round. And you still have 2 that are, or you have conference opponent in Alabama and then Oral Roberts that are in the Sweet 16.
Now, are you one of those people that fills out a second chance Sweet 16 bracket, or are you just sticking?
No, at this point, whenever my bracket gets busted, which inevitably happens every year, I just enjoy the games from that point.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm one of those people that only fills out one bracket. My wife did a bracket, which turns out her original bracket's doing better than mine. And then I had my dog fill out a bracket. What I did is I took a treat in each hand, and then whichever her nose went to was either the high seed or the low seed. And she had who did she have? She had Norfolk State winning the national championship. So obviously her bracket's not any good, but I just didn't know if you were one of those guys that did the second chance Sweet 16 bracket or anything. I don't do it.
No, but I will say, just talking about kind of that 50-50 thing that you did with your dog, I actually have a buddy in DC who doesn't keep up with sports, does not. I mean, he's one of those guys. So when he was growing up, his sports were play baseball for a little bit, but then he was into wakeboarding, skateboarding, cycling. He's a really big mountain biker and cyclist and all that sort of stuff. But he literally did a coin flip for every game because he doesn't watch college basketball. He's not interested in it. And we entered our brackets into a big pool. And it's the same one I used for every thing I entered in, but there's 20 of us or so, 20, 25 of us. He's in first place.
Yeah, it's just this time. It's like fantasy sports almost. I mean, my grandma has a fantasy football team in our family league, and it turns out more times than not that she's in the top 4 or 5 of the league, and she doesn't barely watch football or know anything about it. So the brackets is kind of one of those things you can throw a quarter and pick your teams and actually have success with it. But it's cool that you're actually doing well, because there's not much of that going around. What's your percentile in the ESPN rankings? Where are you at?
I haven't even kept up with it just because I don't have a lot of points. Like I'll scan and look at how many actual points I have, and it's not a whole lot. But when I'm looking at everybody else, because of the upsets I pick and because I still have 3 Final Four teams available, I have the most potential points out of anybody. So if things go well from this point, I could still end up with one of the better brackets out there. But right now, I don't think I'm anywhere close to the top. I think it's all just in potential right now.
Well, I think you're doing better than most. But so let's dive into the Sweet 16 action starting tomorrow. The first game of the day is Oregon State, out of all teams, facing Loyola Chicago, the team that beat handedly Illinois and held down their 2 key players, Io Dosunmu and Kofi What's his
Coburn.
name? Kofi, yeah. So who do you see in this game, and give me a little bit of analysis on what you're seeing here in this matchup?
Well, normally if I see this matchup on paper, I'm going straight Loyola because Loyola is obviously the better team on paper. But then you got to look at the fact that Oregon State went on a run to win the Pac-12 championship, and they're continuing that run in the NCAA tournament by winning 2 games that they really weren't supposed to win. So it makes it really hard to pick. I haven't really watched Oregon State all that much because I thought that, their first and second round games, I just thought they would lose. I was like, I'm not going to watch that. It's not going to be close. Or I'm not going to watch that. It's not going to be close. And so they won. So I don't know exactly the style of play they run or anything about them really, other than they have a lot of momentum right now, and it's really hard to go against that. However, when you look at Loyola, they just beat Illinois. And I did watch that game, and Porter Moser put on a clinic. I mean, the offense they ran completely neutralized Illinois. Honestly, Moser outcoached Brad Underwood that entire game, and I'm not going to go against Cameron Krutwig. I'm going to go Loyola on this game.
Yeah, the line's at 6.5 right now. Man, like you, I haven't watched a whole lot of Oregon State basketball, but I do know one thing. They don't have anybody that can play with Krutwig right now. I mean, the guy is like the college version of Nikola Jokic. I mean, he is a straight up playmaking scorer from the paint. I don't see Oregon. I think Oregon State's run is going to fall short right here. I think Loyola's defense shuts Oregon State's chances down. I think they outscore them. I think it's a low-scoring game. The over-under is at 125. I think I would trickle towards the under in this game. I think it's going to be a low, slow Loyola victory. They're covering the 6.5 and take the under at the 125. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say definitely on the under and definitely for Loyola to cover. I don't think they're going to blow them out or anything, but I say definitely just because I don't think Oregon State comes within 6.5, but it's not going to be like oh my God, Loyola's rolling away with it. I think Loyola's going to win by 8, 9.
I agree. I completely agree. Somewhere around the 55 to 45, 46 region, something like that.
I was going to say, 60 to 52 or something?
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah. So moving on to the second game of the day, Villanova facing off against Baylor. Villanova being without Colin Gillespie. It seems like these last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it hasn't really mattered for Villanova. They've been playing great basketball. Do you think they stand any chance against Baylor right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, Nova's a good basketball team. They have a really good coach in Jay Wright, and I think that they did get help when they got the one other guard back. I blank on his name right now, but they had 2 injuries and
Justin Moore.
Yes. So he's back, and that kind of lessens the blow of not having Gillespie. But Gillespie's also their starting point guard and their floor general, so it's still not the same. So I had Villanova losing in the second round. Obviously, they're still in it. Can they beat Baylor? Yes. They have the coach that can do it. They have the talent that could do it. They have a really talented roster. But Baylor, they're looking really good right now. They looked impressive.
That guard play that they have there is just magical. I mean, those 3 guards there are ridiculous.
Yeah, Villanova can win this game. I'm not trying to say that it's impossible for them to win. I'm just going to say that it's going to be Baylor. And I think it'll be close for a bit, but I don't think it finishes close.
The way I look at it is Baylor's last game was Wisconsin. They won by 13, and Wisconsin was never really they never got to that point to where you felt like this could happen. It kind of stayed in that 8 to 15 range, and
even 13 kind of makes it sound like it was closer than it really was, because I think it was at one point it might have been 15 to 20, and there was Wisconsin never had any momentum. Baylor was completely dominating the pace and the flow of the game. So I mean, 13 even is kind of generous when you talk about perception and everything.
This one thing I'll give you. The line is at 7.5, obviously in the favor of Baylor, and the over under is at 141. The line, the stat that I like in this game is Baylor's point differential. They give out 84 and only give up 59. I mean, that's tops of the country.
Yeah,
and
that's
plus
wow.
minus. That's impressive. I think Baylor covers the 7.5 here. I don't see Villanova being able to stay with Baylor. I could definitely see this game being like the Wisconsin game, where it kind of, you kind of get that maybe they could do it. All right, no, they can't. The over-under is at 141. I'm not going to touch the over-under in this game. I think it could go either way. This could be a 90 to 80 or a 60 to 50. I could see it either way. But
I'll go Baylor covers, taking the over.
Taking the over 141. Okay. All right. Absolutely. I agree with you on the Baylor pick. I think Baylor covers the 7.5, and the consensus is 70% of bettors are agreeing with us on that. So moving on to the game that whoever is listening to this probably cares about the most, the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles facing off against your Arkansas Razorbacks. Jackson, do they stand a chance against the Hogs?
It's one of those weird things where they've played each other before this year, but both teams are completely different than that first meeting. Oral Roberts does not have RJ Glasper right now. But they do still have Asmus and O'Bannon. Arkansas in the first matchup, Desi Sills had a double-double. Jalen Williams and Devo Davis weren't really key components to that victory, and Vance Jackson played 10 minutes. A lot has changed. You really kind of throw that first game out at this point with all that's different. Just looking at how Arkansas has played, and you look at this game on paper, one would normally say, oh, yeah, Arkansas's probably got this in the bag. But Oral Roberts just beat Ohio State, and they just beat Florida. So I don't think you can just completely throw it out. But I do think Arkansas wins, and I do think they win. I don't know what the spread is. Maybe 11 is the last thing I saw.
11.5.
11.5. I'm going to say Oral Roberts covers, but Arkansas wins.
I'm with you on that one. I think this is going to be a closer game than people might think. The consensus is 60% of bettors are taking Arkansas in the 11.5, and I'm with the 40% there. I think this is going to be a close game. The over/under is at 158, so you're looking in that region of both teams scoring 80 plus. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I mean, Oral Roberts has the country's leading scorer, and Arkansas averages 80 points a game. So that's like right on that line where I kind of don't even want to touch it, honestly, if that's me, because, I wouldn't touch the over/under on that one.
The thing I would look at if I'm gambling on this game, and which I'm not gambling on this game because I don't gamble on Arkansas because they're my team, and I feel like it just messes me up and messes them up every time I bet on them. But Oral Roberts is one of the worst defensive teams, if not the worst defensive team left in the NCAA tournament, allowing 75 points a game. I can't remember what the Ken Palm rating was. It's in the 200s as far as their defensive rating. So I could see the Hogs just running away with this in the second half if they go on a little bit of a run. What do you think?
No, I think that's definitely possible for sure. It's all a matter of, I guess, how Arkansas plays defensively too, because O'Bannon and Asmus are two guys that you're not going to really stop them. You're just trying to minimize their impact. Their first meeting, Asmus had 11 points, but O'Bannon put up a double-double with 24 and 10. So, I mean, it's kind of a pick your poison type thing. And Arkansas got the victory there. I think defensively, they're better. Arkansas is better on the interior, and especially with Jalen Williams and Justin Smith being more versatile. So I think O'Bannon won't have as big of a game, but I also think you insert Devo Davis, you insert Jalen Tate. It's going to be hard for A. Smith to have his normal kind of night. So if everything is clicking and everything goes right for the Razorbacks, they guard like they're supposed to and like they're capable of, Arkansas could win by 15 if they completely take those two guys away from the game and make all the other pieces beat them.
I don't think O'Banner is going to have near the game he had in Fayetteville against Jalen Williams. I think Jalen Williams is a defensive presence that he did not visit here in Fayetteville that could possibly hold him to a 5-5, 7-7 kind of game. But moving on to Syracuse, and we'll get back and we'll touch base with these winning teams that we've picked, and we'll kind of go through our Elite Eight and Final Four picks. But moving on to Syracuse at Houston, the nightcap on Saturday. Buddy Boeheim, and I told you about this young man when we were picking the brackets. He is and like Pat Bradley says, he's a shooter, folks.
Mm-hmm.
He is a shooter. He is a beast out on the court. But Houston has not lost in a while. They're looking really good. They're looking as good as some people had them. I didn't necessarily believe in them, obviously picking Cleveland State to beat them. But who you got in this matchup?
I was one of those people who really didn't believe in Houston all that much, and the way they performed in the tournament just kind of opened my eyes. I should probably have put more faith into them, believed in them a little bit more as a team. But on the same token, Syracuse has done the same exact thing. It's one of those deals where you don't bet against Jim Boeheim in March when he's a double-digit seed. It's just one of those things. He always seems to exceed expectations when he's a double-digit seed in March. Kind of like it doesn't matter what Tom Izzo's seed, except for this year. It doesn't matter what Tom Izzo's seed is in March. He's going to perform well in the NCAA tournament. And I think Boeheim's really proving that again this year just by playing really well. And for some reason, I will never understand. The 2-3 zone is one of the oldest defenses in college basketball, one of the easiest to scout. And everybody knows it's coming because Boeheim's run it for 3 decades. But for whatever reason, everybody has trouble playing against a 2-3 zone in the NCAA tournament. It's like they've never played against 2-3 zone before. Just attack the middle, and it's just not that difficult. A lot of opponents act like they've never seen it before. Kelvin Sampson strikes me as the type of coach who's going to really drill it into his guys' heads. Hey, it's just a 2-3 zone. And not to minimize Syracuse's 2-3 zone, because they do run a really, really good 2-3 zone, and it has worked for so long for Boeheim. But at the end of the day, it's still a 2-3 zone, and at the college level, you got to know how to attack that. Most teams just act like they don't even know how to attack it. Kelvin Sampson's going to drill it into his guys. They're going to attack. I'm going to take Houston in this one.
Well, and there's a thing to say about the 2-3 zone nowadays with the lost art of the mid-range shot. In college basketball, you see it more than you see it in the NBA. But there's that lost art of the mid-range shot. You run that 2-3 zone, everybody's shooting threes. It's a lot easier to cover that perimeter lane, and especially if you're a team like Illinois that runs 4 guys out on the perimeter that can shoot, and you got your one big man, it's a perfect matchup for it. So I can see why nowadays Syracuse gives people trouble with that zone, but I can also see your point of it's coming, scout it, play against it. There's ways around it. I think if there's a coach in this game or in this tournament that could give the 2-3 zone a little bit of problem, I think Kelvin Sampson's one of those coaches. The line's at 6.5 in Houston's favor. 60% of bettors are taking Houston and the points. I like Syracuse and the 6.5. I might even play Syracuse in the money line for the upset here. I really like the way they're playing right now, and I really like Buddy Boeheim and the way he shoots the ball. I don't know if they have anybody on this Houston team that can stop them. The over-under is at 140.5. What do you like that, or you like the over, or you like the under? What do you like?
So I think your pick is pretty reasonable. I don't think you can pick Syracuse and like find a fault with it. Just they're playing really well right now. But I'm still gonna stick with Houston. I'm gonna take the points, and I'll say the over.
Over of 140. Okay, could definitely see that. Houston on a 9-game winning streak, though. I couldn't remember that. But, yeah, they are on a 9-game winning streak. They have not lost in 9 games.
I just think when it comes down to it, you look at the kind of player that Buddy Boeheim is. If it ends up being a close game, Houston has the ability to score. They don't have to score in droves. They don't really like taking a whole bunch of threes. But they'll take a lot of threes at times, but they're not going to take dumb shots, or they're not going to take rush shots. Sampson wants them to take smart shots they're going to have the ability to make. But when Buddy Boeheim gets out there, if he's having a hot start, if he's firing on all cylinders, they might push the tempo up, and that score might pump up there.
Yeah, I could definitely if they expose that 2-3 defense, this game could get out of hand pretty quick for Syracuse. Moving on to the first game of Sunday's action, Creighton pretty much visiting Gonzaga, and the Gonzaga, what John Rothstein calls the Gonzaga Invitational in that side of the bracket. Do the Creighton Blue Jays stand any test for the Gonzaga Bulldogs this weekend?
No. Just no. Sorry, Creighton.
Just mark it up as a W. The line's at 13 right now. Do you think Creighton has a chance at covering that 13?
I'll take no. That's tough because that's a big line for a Sweet 16 game. That's really tough. How
about this split? How about this split for you? I gave you the one earlier. Gonzaga scores 92 points a game and only gives up 63.
Yeah, but this is also the Sweet 16 too. So I think I'll give Creighton the points, but still Gonzaga on the win.
Creighton being 14-16 against the spread. Gonzaga is 14-12-2. I'm going to lean Gonzaga in this matchup. They haven't given me any reason not to bet them and the points. I don't think Creighton stands a chance in this game against Gonzaga. I'm going to take Gonzaga in the points. The over-under's at 158, which is about that same Arkansas line. 158's a lot of points, but I think Gonzaga is going to score those points against Creighton.
I'll take the over.
You would take the over? I think that's where I'm leaning to is over the 158. So we're in agreement. Gonzaga is going to blow this team out. It's just a matter of by how many points and how many points they score. But me and Jackson are going to take over the 158. Jackson's going to take Creighton to cover the 13, and I'll take Gonzaga to cover the 13.
And I only think that because, it's 13 is just a lot for a Sweet 16 matchup. Creighton's a 5 seed. I can't feel comfortable taking 13 at this point.
I don't blame you. Moving on to the second game of Sunday, one of your Final Four teams, Florida State, meeting up with the surprisingly well-playing Michigan Wolverines without one of their best players. How do you see this game playing out?
Give me Florida State. LSU really had a chance to win that game against Michigan. Kind of blew it just with some bad shot selections, bad offense, and bad defense late. That's kind of what you get when you have Will Wade as your coach. But, LSU is one of the most talented rosters in the country and kind of exposed some weaknesses to Michigan that I think Florida State and Leonard Hamilton are really going to key in on. I think Leonard Hamilton is one of the best coaches in the country. He's got a really talented freshman in Scotty Barnes. And just another really good team again. Fairly experienced squad. I think they're going to. I'll take Florida State.
So the line is Michigan 2.5. So you're going to take the money line and try to make a little bit of money there.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I think it's a good play. Florida State showed a lot to me beating Colorado the way they did last round. Michigan was, and I picked LSU in my bracket to beat Michigan, so I wasn't far off in that game. LSU, the final score was 86-78. LSU was in that game. That could have been a last possession game. So
yeah, I think it was a 3-point game, came down to free throws because LSU, I think they were trying to foul and get possession, and I think that's how it ended up. But it was a lot closer than that 8 points.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna roll with you. I'm gonna take the Florida State money line. I'm not even gonna mess with the 2.5 that Michigan's favored here. I'm gonna take the Florida State money line, try to make a little bit of money. The over-under is at 143.5. Both teams average about 77, 78 points a game. Florida State doesn't give up a whole lot of points, though, at 53.5. That's a really good number in an ACC schedule. I don't know how I feel about that over-under. I think I'll take the over just because of the points per games that both teams can score. What do you got?
Normally, I don't think I would touch this, but just because you're asking, I think I'm going to take the under.
You take the under at 143. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Moving on to the third game of our Sweet 16 Sunday, UCLA facing the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is playing great, beat the living crap out of Maryland last weekend. Do you think UCLA? I mean, I hate to call them a Cinderella because it's UCLA. They're not a Cinderella, but in this tournament, as an 11 seed in the Sweet 16, playing number 2 seed Alabama, do they stand a chance to get the Crimson Tide?
See, I think this is one of those cases where you just see a really wrongly seeded team. UCLA coming in at an 11 seed. They had a pretty impressive record just on the surface, not great with like the quadrants and all that sort of stuff. But then that's also where you get into the whole, the Big Ten and the Big 12 kind of dominated the net rankings just because they started out in the preseason so high and they just kind of stayed there because they kept beating each other. So I think UCLA was a victim of the net and the perception of that, even though they put up a good record. So I think you have a UCLA team as an 11 seed that really should have been around probably a 5 or 6 line. I think I would put them around there. So in my mind, I throw seeding out the window. I just look at 2 really good basketball teams. UCLA is probably going to have a better chance than a lot of people think because a lot of people are going to look at that 11 number and look at Alabama's 2 number and be like, oh, well, they don't stand a chance. I don't know the line or anything on this game right now. I'm still going to take Bama, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
So I'm going to take it that you're going to take UCLA in the 6.5. It's not a lot of points.
That's tough because I was going to say Alabama by 7.
So you are taking Alabama the 6.5 or no?
Oh, that's like right on the line, man.
Well,
yeah, I'll take Alabama in the points on that 6.5. Yeah,
that's the bad thing about Vegas in the half points, man. You got to pick one or the other. It's not like it's not like you can get that solid 6 or solid 7 and get your drawback. But you said you're taking Alabama in the 6.5. Yeah. I think I'm with you on that. I don't think UCLA is gonna stay within 6 points. I think this is going to be a 7+ victory for the Crimson Tide, just the way they played against. And Maryland is a decent team. I don't think they're to the ability that UCLA has been playing of lately. But UCLA, if you look at their last 3 games, yeah, they played a pretty good Michigan State team that had played decent over the conference tournament and the last weeks leading up to that. They played BYU, who only played pretty much Gonzaga the whole year. And then they played Abilene Christian, who was a possible Cinderella, who did beat Texas, but is still out of respect, Abilene Christian. Mm-hmm. So it's not like UCLA has played, a Florida State or a Michigan or one of the power teams in this tournament. And Alabama's really that first, tough March Madness test for them, and I don't think they're going to live up to it. I think Alabama handles this game pretty well.
Yeah.
Over under for this game is 145.5. I'm hammering the over in this game.
Over.
I think it's going to be another, 96-77 game like the Maryland game was for Alabama. I think Alabama's going to roll in this game, and I think it's going to be high scoring. So I think we're in agreement on both things. Alabama to cover the 6.5 and the over of the 145.5. So let's cap it off. Oregon at USC, the matchup that a lot of West Coast bracket predictors predicted in the Sweet 16.
USC is another team I had in my Sweet 16. Yeah, so I had them in my Elite 8 too. So there's some of my potential points up there too.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change. The Mobley brothers have been playing.
They're so good.
Out. Oh yeah, it's
well,
like,
and their point guard Peterson's playing at a really high level too. So I mean, you take a really good long, like he's lanky point guard, and then you have two of the really premier post players in the NCAA tournament. That's a recipe to win.
And I'm looking at their past matchup. Looks like USC won 72-58. They were supposed to play twice, but one game got postponed. So USC won the only matchup. 72-58. I could kind of see that happening again here. I think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring than 72-58, but I could see a 10 to 14 point range victory for USC. The line is at 2, so obviously I'm taking the USC and the 2 points. How do you feel in this game?
Take USC and the points. Take the over. Just take it all. I mean, anybody who watched USC versus Kansas knows that USC is going to put up points and they're going to physically dominate you. It's what they do. Easy over and easy USC on this one.
Well, and Oregon scored 75 plus in their last 5 games. They scored. They weren't able to play their first round matchup due to COVID protocol, but they scored 95 on Iowa. I know Iowa's, not a good defensive team, but they're one of the best offensive teams, and Oregon stayed with Iowa and finished them off, scoring 95 points. USC scored 85 and 72 in their last 2 games. The over-under is at 138.5. I'm with you. I'm hammering the over in this game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm also hammering the USC too. So I think we're in agreement on that game, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All righty. So we are going to view our Elite 8 matchup. Let me pull this bracket up. And we've got Gonzaga facing USC in a game that I think is going to be spectacular.
Great game. It's going to be a close one, but I'm still taking Gonzaga.
Still taking Gonzaga to beat the Trojans. If I did a second chance bracket like we were talking about earlier, which I'm not going to, but if I did do a second chance bracket, this would be the upset I would pick. I would take USC to beat Gonzaga and go to the Final Four. I'm curious to see what that, if it does happen, if this matchup does happen, what the insiders will put the line at. It's obviously going to be Gonzaga favored, but by how many points is the question?
I would say by 6.
6. I could see that. I could definitely see that 6 or 7 range for sure. I'm with you on that one. So Florida State and Alabama, I think we agreed on. Yeah, Alabama and Florida State. Another great game in the Elite 8. Who do you got?
Florida State.
Florida State still. He's sticking with his bracket, folks.
If there's a team that can both score enough to outpace Alabama, but also play good enough defense to slow them down, outside of Arkansas, who's done that before too, I think it's Florida State.
But Alabama can do the same too.
They can, but they're the higher seed. That's why I said if there's a team who can do it to Bama, it's Florida State. Bama's been doing that to everybody.
True. I'm going to take Bama's defense in that matchup. I think Bama makes the Final Four by beating Michigan, because I picked Michigan. I think Alabama's going to beat Michigan and make the Final Four. Looking back up, we got Arkansas beating Oral Roberts, going to the Elite 8 and facing off against what most people think in this state against the Baylor Bears. You obviously are going to stick with your Arkansas Final Four pick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious to see what the line is on this game. I know the over-under is going to be up there, 160 range.
I'd say the line is probably 5 for Baylor, 4.5.
You think that? I see. I was thinking about 4. I was thinking about 4, 3.5, 4. I think is what that line's going to be if it happens. I'll take Arkansas to cover that line, but I will still stick with my pick for Baylor to win the game. Well, I guess I picked Ohio State, but I had Baylor facing off against Ohio State, so I'll stay with Baylor being the better team in this bracket, and beating Arkansas to get to the Final Four. Don't blame me. Baylor's good. Baylor's super good, man.
They're very good.
I'm sorry. They're just so. And you know what? To be honest with you, Jackson, if anybody in this tournament has the defensive guards to stop Baylor,
that's the whole reason. That is the whole reason. Because I tried not to make homer picks. I really felt like Arkansas could beat Baylor, and that's the reason I picked it. I think out of the 1 seeds, I felt like the 2 weakest were going to be Baylor coming off of COVID protocol, coming into the tournament, that is. Baylor coming off of protocol and Michigan. Well, then Illinois got eliminated after they won the Big Ten tournament. So that threw a wrinkle and everything. But and Baylor's looked fantastic. So that whole thought process that I had in picking Arkansas initially is kind of out the window. But I still have that same thinking of, you have 6'6" Jalen Tate. You have 6'6" Moses Moody with a 7-foot wingspan. 6-foot Devontae Davis. You have Justin Smith, who can guard anybody on the court at 6'7". That's a lineup, and those are guards who can match up against Baylor.
Well, and Devo might be short, but he's got a wingspan.
He's long.
With 6'7", 6'8" wingspan. He's so long, and it kind of shows when he. I don't know if you see it too. You probably do, but when he dribbles the ball and his movement, he's so lanky. Him and Jalen,
he takes those long strides too.
Him and Jalen dribble the ball so. And I don't want to mean it in a bad way, but they dribble the ball so awkwardly. They're very good ball handlers. I mean, they can play the game well, but they just look so lanky and awkward when they dribble the ball. But they tend to get the job done. But to my point, I could definitely see Arkansas beating Baylor and getting to the Final Four just based on the fact that they have the defensive guards and the length to guard Baylor. But having said that, this Arkansas team has shown times where they are not good at guarding the three-point line. And I tell you, if you don't bring yourself to guard the three-point line against the Baylor Bears, you're going to get walked up and down the court real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to potential another potential Final Four team, we got Loyola facing off against. I had Syracuse, you had Houston. Who wins, Loyola and Houston? Loyola in the Final Four. You know what? And they're not Cinderellas anymore. Let's just get that straight. They're not. This is just a really damn good basketball team.
Again, they weren't seeded correctly. They should have been a 5 or a 6 seed. They got put at a disadvantage and still beat a 1 seed to make it to where they are. So, I'll take Loyola.
I got Loyola and Syracuse, and I'm going to take defense of Loyola too. I'm going to put them in the Final Four against the boy. Whew, man, that would, you know what? And now that we've picked our Final Fours and we're pretty much the same, except for I got Alabama and you got Florida State, and I got USC and you got Gonzaga. Man, that Arkansas Loyola game. You know, and on paper, you would look at that and you'd be like, "Oh, this is like the Oral Roberts game." I'm taking the Hawks, easy.
I might take Loyola there. You just never know.
Just on pure defense, pure defense. I think if anybody can play with the big, I forgot his name already. What's his name?
Bella's big, Krutwig.
Yeah, Krutwig. Yeah, if anybody can play with Krutwig on our team, it's going to be Jalen. But then again, Jalen is a freshman. He doesn't have that skill to keep up with Krutwig and Krutwig's footwork. Krutwig's footwork is amazing.
Very good footwork, but then you look at Loyola's offense too. It's very, it's designed to wear you out. And for Arkansas, conditioning is kind of a focal point of the program because they're one of the best teams, one of the fastest teams in college basketball. And in the tournament, they really only played 7 players. So you would think conditioning wouldn't be that much of a factor. But when you're in the middle of a game and your opponent is just doing a straight up dribble drive, dribble handoff over and over again for 25 seconds every possession until they finally get an open look on a back screen or something, you're tired. I've been there before. I've played against those types of teams. You are sucking air. So it would be a very difficult matchup.
You know what? I'm not gonna ask you to pick a winner of your potential Final Four matchup because we'll probably get you back on the show and run over the Final Four. But just to talk about it, Gonzaga and you've got Florida State in that matchup. That would be a great matchup too, because Florida State's one of those teams that can play defense, and Gonzaga's probably the best offensive team in the country. I'm not going to ask you how you see that one, rolling out, but maybe give me a couple of things you're watching in that game.
I mean, I would take Gonzaga just because I just, like I said on the last show, I think they are a completely different Gonzaga team than we've ever seen before. That's kind of the whole culture change. They've been a good team for a long time. We talked about, they haven't won a national championship. Well, they signed their first 5-star prospect last year, Jalen Suggs, who's their point guard this year. Well, they just signed another 5-star prospect for next year today. So I don't really see that changing anytime soon. They're hitting up names in the portal as well. I think they're the favorites to land that North Carolina transfer big too. So that's all looking towards the future. But, man, that's all just to say that Gonzaga is completely different than anything we've seen before from that program. Florida State's a very good program under Leonard Hamilton. I just think this would probably be the best matchup to beat Gonzaga this year. Would be a Florida State versus Gonzaga if that's what happens. And in that case, I would have to go Gonzaga by 5.
Gonzaga by 5. Okay. Well, since you picked, and we know that you already have Gonzaga and Arkansas in your national championship, you originally picked Gonzaga to beat the Razorbacks. You still see that right now?
Oh, yeah.
So you said they beat Florida State by 5. How much they beat the Hogs by?
8-10.
Ooh, you think it's a track meet all game, huh? You think Gonzaga's just going to outscore them all day?
It'd be like 104-95.
Oh, man, that would just tear the hearts of Razorback hopefuls up, man, to get all the way to the national championship game and then have to play a team that literally just can't stop getting the ball in the bucket. That would be so painful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I'm not speaking for you, but I'm sure you can relate with me that just to get that far and then watch a team have one of their best shooting nights of the tournament against you in the national championship game would hurt.
Oh, absolutely.
So now that we went over our Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and championship matchups with you, Jackson, let's go over maybe a few things that I've been keeping an eye on myself, and they're not gambling related. I guess you could make them gambling related if you really looked into it. But I kind of just wanted to touch base on all of this coaching search news. I know we just heard today, a couple of hours ago, that Shaka Smart is going to be leaving to Marquette. We know the Indiana job is open. Minnesota hired an assistant from, I can't remember. They hired an assistant from another ACC school, I believe. So that job's closed up. Indiana and Texas are officially open. Do you see Musselman, Chris Beard on the move?
Chris Beard, maybe. Musselman, no. There was a quote by Hunter Yurachek. There was an interview that I think it was Pig Trail Network or Pig Trail Nation, whatever, did with him. And he was essentially saying, look, I talk to Muss every day, talk to Muss's agent every week. We're all on the same page. We're going to get it done after the tournament. No distractions right now. When you see names connected with other jobs, that's leverage. Agents trying to get leverage, but Muss has all the leverage in the world right now because he's winning games. It's the first Sweet 16 in 25 years. He has all the leverage in the world. So, I'm not worried about Muss leaving.
Yeah, and they were talking about it today on the Morning Rush Ties show there with Tommy Kraft. They were talking this morning about what kind of his salary, because he's gonna get an extension and an increase in salary after the tournament's over. It's inevitable. I'm seeing him somewhere in the 4.5 to 5 region. I agree with the Morning Rush. That's where they were at too. I don't know how many years he's got left on his contract here at Arkansas, but I know whatever it is, it's going to be doubled or tripled, and then they're going to give him a pay raise. What do you see his contract amount being in what range?
So currently, I think it is at 2.75 through 26. And I think that's because it was at 2.5 through 25. But making the NCAA tournament, making the Sweet 16, got him a year extension and $250,000 raise. So he went from 2.5 through 25 to 2.75 to 26. But that's his base, his original contract. So I really think right now we're looking at 4, an Elite 8 appearance, 4.5, and then heavily incentive based after that, similar to now. So his base salary, even though it would be either 4 or 4.5, depending on success, he could earn himself an extension, earn himself a raise, get him up to as high as 5.5 to 6, probably, depending on, how much each bonus would be. If those bonuses go up from what they were in his original contract, like does making the Final Four become more of a bonus than $350,000 like it is currently? Does winning the championship, is that more than a $500,000 bonus like it is currently? Like what the exact framework of all that would be. But yeah, right now, looking at 4, Elite 8, I would say 4.5. And I really do think one game would be worth $500,000 just based on the perception that would carry with it.
Yeah, I don't see him leaving. I'm not going to say that he's not going to leave in the future for a possible NBA gig, because I could definitely see the NBA calling if Arkansas keeps the success rolling, even with a couple Final Four appearances, if that happens, a national championship, whatever. But I could definitely see the NBA calling one day on him, and I think if the right team with the right roster calls, I think we could possibly lose Musselman. Do you think we could lose him to the NBA?
Probably not, just because he mentioned, either he or his wife mentioned in a recent podcast, I think it was actually him, that he was talking about, once I got back in the college game, we had a family discussion, and like, it's kind of where I'm at. It was kind of an investment into my future to stay in the college game, and it's working best with my family right now. So that's kind of where we're at.
And why would you want to? I know you live in around Little Rock, but why would you want to leave Fayetteville? I don't know. You've been up here, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
it's just a beautiful place, man. It's a great place to raise a family. It
really is.
I don't know what that moron from Indiana. Did you hear what he said?
Chicken houses
and cat hoarders. What kind of demented person says cat hoarders?
He saw one guy go in. The thing that bothered me the most is he saw one person at Walmart at night. It was like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Okay, you're at Walmart at night. That's not an Arkansas thing. That's an anywhere thing. Number 2, there's no reason for him to go out of his way to talk about how large man was. That's completely uncalled for. Has nothing to do with who that man is as a person. And then he's like going all about, oh, well, this really morbidly obese person buying a ton of cat food. Number 1, he could have some cats. He could be buying in bulk. You never know. Number 2, he could have some cats and he's feeding stray cats. You never know. Number 3, people use it to fish too. Yeah,
you didn't help our case with that last one there, Jackson.
I don't care.
Using cat food to fish. I've heard of hot dogs. I ain't never heard of fishing with cat food, but
Man, maybe my family's just country, but I've definitely had some cousins do that before. Of course, they're down south, like in Warren.
like the wet cat food, right? Like for catfish.
Yeah.
Stink bait. Yeah. I could see that for sure. For sure. I could see that. Since you've been working on it, I know you've been working on it because you were talking about it in your, I believe it was your podcast or you tweeted about it. But you've been working on the transfer portal a little bit because it has turned out to be quite spicy during the tournament with some really talented guys entering their name to the portal. I know Arkansas keeps an eye on every person that pretty much goes through the portal. Is there anybody that is drawing like serious interest in the Hogs right now?
Oh yeah, so I have a big board running on Rivals. If anybody wants to join Rivals, or if you're a member of Rivals, you've probably seen it. But over on the board over there, there's actually a promo going on. You use Hog Sweet 16, HAWG Sweet, and then the number 16. You pay for 1 month, and then you get 6 months free after that, and you'll have access to our premium content. But on that board, I had the list of names of, the more serious targets. It seems like, Arkansas's contacted 35 transfers so far, I think. Maybe even more than that. That's, kind of what we've been able to keep track of. But what's been put out on the internet of who's been in contact with Arkansas, at least initially. And then from there, I dive in on different interviews that they've done, areas of need, reciprocal interest, all this sort of stuff. So the big board is literally just a list of names, the players' height, weight, stats, and then a little blurb on each one of them. And then on each one, it'll have either hot, medium, or cold as far as their level of interest. And just for the sake of it, if someone commits elsewhere, I keep them on the board and I just change in that parentheses their interest level to committed to so-and-so or whatever. As far as names go, you have Antonio Day, the Florida National point guard. You have Marvin Johnson, Eastern Illinois wing. Aldis Toney from Pittsburgh. There's a guy, blanking on his name right now, actually.
It's all right if you don't remember it. I kind of threw you into the fire without any prep here.
Yeah, no, there are a bunch of names to keep track of. They're all on the big board, but there are a lot. There are plenty of options, and there are plenty of plan A's, there are plenty of plan B's, and that sort of thing. And ultimately, a lot of these are just guesses too, because it's similar to high school recruiting, except transfer guys don't like talking as much as high school recruits. So a lot of what you're figuring are based on guesses or third-party information and that sort of stuff. But some of the information I've gotten is really, really solid. So I'm excited. I'm proud of all that work I've done.
You creating some sources, are you, Jackson?
Oh yeah, I got plenty of hashtag sauces.
I don't think I'm one of those sources other than when someone asks you a gambling question. That right there is the true degenerate right there. I'm just your local degenerate for Jackson. That's all it is.
Yeah, I think I've had like 3 or 4 people come and ask me like gambling advice, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. Here, and I tag you. I'm like, go ask Dylan. I don't know.
And I'm more than happy to answer that question. Shout out to Best Bar JJ's, who was beat in the Elite Eight of the Best Bar competition.
It was rigged.
Facts. I agree with you 100%. But shout out JJ's Grill. I know you've seen this shirt before, the national championship, kind of like replica, but it's got JJ's on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to my sister-in-law Sylvia for hooking it up. She's a bartender over there on Weddington, so it sucked to see JJ's lose that. I don't mean to get on another note, but JJ's obviously the best bar in that whole competition. It's rigged, like Jackson says. But that shout out to JJ's.
They bought votes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we certainly appreciate you, Jackson, for coming on the show again. We held you a little bit longer than I probably needed to. But we appreciate your time. And y'all be looking out for new episodes of the JC Hoops Pod. I'll let you go ahead and tell them about what you got going on.
Oh, yeah. So JC Hoops Podcast, you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It's under the Hogbeat Network. So if you want to go on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, look up Hogbeat, HAWG Beat, BEAT, all one word, and it'll be in there. So my last episode, I talked Sweet 16 with Pat Bradley. He was on the 1996 Sweet 16 team.
The shooter.
Had some really good quotes from him talking about how good the team played down the stretch, how they weren't really a Cinderella because of how they started off so strong. Talking about this year's team. He also trashed the NCAA a little bit, so he got some spiciness in there. All wrapped up in a nice northern accent. And then episode before that, I actually had Coach Muss on. So if you want to dive in on that one too, I got 2 great guests the last 2 episodes, and have hopefully more coming. Hopefully my next one isn't like a season recap or anything. So
we're hoping we're covering a Final Four with the Hogs in it.
Hopefully, I might have to do if they win Saturday, I might have to do a emergency Elite 8 episode between games. So just so it's not a Sweet 16 and then a season recap.
Well, heck, man, we always appreciate you sharing your time. We know you're a busy guy. You got school going on. You got your podcast, the transfer portal. God knows you got a lot going on, but I always appreciate you coming on the show and going over our college basketball with us. But we will hopefully get you on for a Final Four preview when it is that time. But until then, we appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll holler at you soon.
All right.